Hi, good afternoon. I'm going to relax because I know a third of the people in the room, I think, probably. Now, today I decided that I'm going to talk about what really makes me tick, and that's creativity. I know most of you, or many of you, know me as an environmentalist presently, but I decided that it's important to talk about something which is intellectually inspiring to me and to you, and also I decided there are a lot of NGOs represented today. But of course, I'm very passionate about the environment. That goes without saying. And actually, the main reason I decided to go into the NGO and environmental world was because I thought that it was the best way to harness my creativity to tackle Hong Kong's biggest environmental and public health crisis, air pollution. But enough about that for today. I also want to say today that I'm not here to deliver any answers, but really to give you some food for thought so that you, as business and opinion leaders, can think about all the challenges to creativity that we face today. And hopefully, when you go home, you'll think about how can you better engineer change at home, at work, in order to create a more stimulating and creative place to live in today. Now, first I'm going to start with a description of the flat world, which of course most of you are familiar with. But it's important to understand the flat world because many flat world dynamics are extremely pernicious to creativity. And of course, those dynamics also magnify and make worse certain dynamics which predated new media. To begin, I would say that the flat world is largely the result of falling costs and barriers, specifically in transport, manufacturing, and communication. And of course, now this all results in virtually zero discovery costs of communication. Now, with zero discovery costs and globally networked markets, that results in an unprecedented efficiency of two-way matching between buyer and seller, which pretty much allows markets to compound in growth at almost lightning speed. And then on top of that, as a related phenomenon, that enables a lot of participation as well, because zero discovery costs plus cheap PCs mean that the passive consumer is increasingly becoming an active participant in the spheres of both content and product creation. Now, the good news is participation leads to a proliferation of choices. And by definition, more choice leads to greater differentiation. And now we see a proliferation, indeed an explosion of niche markets in both contents and products. So instead of buying Wine Spectator, I can subscribe to the Facebook fan page, which follows First Growth, Merlots from Saint-Emilion or something similar. Or instead of trying to find my husband by joining the church choir, I can now just log on to Match.com and tick off all the psychographic boxes which float my boat. So in essence, each individual has become a market or community of one. Now, with such an abundance of differentiated choices, it should be obvious that my needs are going to be met a lot more efficiently and accurately through essentially a customized stream of products and choices. Now, since we're talking about need matching, let's talk about the function and the evolution of the concept of the traditional brand. Now, brands exist because, until now, there's been an imperfect match between the consumer and the product. Because I can't buy exactly what I want or need, I have to buy a branded product which meets my needs more or less. A brand represents a set of emotional and functional characteristics. So on the emotional side, that could be validation, aspiration, a sense of belonging to a community which espouses a certain set of values or morality. On the functional side, brands deliver technology and design at a certain level of quality and price. But I would aver that the act of consumption is no longer the validating experience that it once was. That instead, human beings are finding validation by engaging in other types of behavior. For example, social networks or creation enabled by technologies such as self-publishing. So where does that leave the traditional brand? Brands will increasingly become functional propositions, hopefully built on unique technologies. But how compelling is that functional proposition when today's technology can deliver customized solutions based on exact individual preferences? Let's take an example. And this is an example which is something which is on our doorstep today. Let's say I buy Dove soap because of its fantastic moisturizing capabilities. Now, why am I going to continue to buy Dove soap when I can log on and buy one year supply of soap formulated according to this pH of my skin and my dermatological history? Probably, if it's almost at the same price as Dove soap, I'll stop buying branded Dove soap. The point being that as cheap customization, just-in-time manufacturing, and inexpensive technologies like digital three-dimensional printing allow customers to satisfy their needs with 100% accuracy, why buy a brand when I can just buy exactly what I need or want? Therefore, I would say that brands will begin to cede center stage to social communities and technologies, and that the most adept traditional brands will transform themselves into social communities which enable the use of technology. So in essence, ideals and aspirations will be superseded by solutions. Now, of course, I want to add a caveat, which is rather obvious, especially to anyone in marketing or branding. There will always be an important space for the brand where art and emotion are an important component of the consumer experience. And of course, many technologies are too expensive to deliver personalized solutions. Now, based on what I've said, which is a world of exploding, hyper-differentiated choice in a flat world of a single global interconnected market, you get this video, which I hope is going to play, which exemplifies the world of 1 inch wide, 10 miles deep. Like it was heresy not to play a video showing starving children or animals, so I apologize for that, and I shouldn't be engaging in any kind of frippery because I'm repudiating the consumer world now as an environmentalist. But this video is not very important for the industry that it covers or the designer or the fact that it's about fashion. The point of that video, which was done by a designer named Gareth Pugh, who's an English designer, is that it exemplifies this concept of 1 inch wide, 10 miles deep, because it is an extremely personal artistic vision of an individual which can potentially reach millions of people and create a self-selecting market of customers and acolytes who strongly identify with his singularly pointed view of the world. I also want to add that he decided to make that video in lieu of a traditional fashion show presentation this season because he was hoping to reach a much wider audience. Now, for me, that video actually inspired me to ditch my original idea to give a presentation about the environment, because this presentation is actually the culmination of a cogitation that I've been undergoing for almost 5 years, thinking about the flat world and what I perceive, just based on my creative directorship at Shanghai Tang, is dwindling creativity. So why don't we see more videos like this? How come we don't encounter the surprise and delight of watching a movie like Avatar more often? And think about how much you look forward to the next Lady Gaga video because of all the dross between all the other crap that's on YouTube. Or even the sensation of touching the iPad for the first time. I mean, after all, we live in a society, well, not a society, but a flat world where there's a lot more education, participation, experimentation, and cross-pollination. So instead, but we have this sinking feeling that creativity is going to the dogs, that what's being pursued today is crass, trite, mercenary, and over-commercialized. Now, before I can even attempt an answer to that question, I'd like to try to define creativity by using the lens of art, because art is actually the highest form of creativity, and it's only by understanding art that we can both encourage and assess creativity more successfully. Now, art is obviously a huge, slippery, and very controversial topic, but I think we can agree on these three basic principles. True art is utterly original. True art is an unfiltered personal vision, and true art is authentic, not commercial. Now, I'm going to get a little bit more, going to try to be personal, because the organizer said I have to introduce personal anecdotes. So let's look a little bit at the history and the evolution of creativity, especially in the commercial world. When I was growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, believe it or not, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, it was hard to even eat an authentic Swiss chocolate, watch a Francois Truffaut movie, buy caviar, or even a daily edition of the New York Times. But I was really lucky. I grew up in a very cultivated household, and my parents subscribed to the Sunday New York Times. And I would say that by the age of 11, I was really crazy about fashion. So probably the 2 days of the year that I looked forward to the most were when the fashions of the Times would come with the newspaper, and it was a beautiful color supplement, and it was crammed with images from designers, otherworldly images of designers with the names of Jeffrey Bean, Mary McFadden, Bill Blass. Unfortunately, none of them are still, some of them are, most of them have passed away. The main point being that at that point, fashion, design, art, and culture were really not made for the ordinary person, but really for jet-setting socialites. And back then, culture, art, and design and fashion were dominated by a small elite of critics and connoisseurs. And that, believe it or not, sales was not the ultimate measure of success. Rather, critical kudos were. Now, that all changed in the early 1980s with the advent of global brands like Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein, who used advertising and mass media to create global design brands. Most importantly, in light of what I'm going to say, Joe Q. Public was invited into the world of elite consumption for the first time. In 1979, which is when Brooke Shields fronted this campaign for Calvin Klein, another quiet revolution was underfoot with the creation of a printed restaurant guide named Zagat's, which called feedback from the general public to make pithy restaurant reviews. At that time, that was considered distasteful, even subversive. Now, of course, it's commonplace for the public to be consulted. You could even say that the world is now one big focus group. In some cases, the consumer has merged with the producer altogether. Crowdsourced design sites like Threadless.com and Garms.com invite the public to both design and then vote on what to make. Now, again, there is nothing wrong with that from a moral, ethical standpoint. In fact, you'd think the more people doing creative stuff, genius should be much more likely to emerge. Now, unfortunately, I only wish it was as easy or obvious as that. But instead, there are a lot of forces at work which suppress creativity all the time. So the point of my talk is also to shed some light on what these phenomena are so that hopefully it will help you, especially business people in the creative industry or even not in the creative industry, make decisions going forward. Now, to my mind, there are three major forces holding back creativity. The first one is what I call the practice of recycling past successes, which is largely the result of capitalism combined with the need to make quarterly public reporting of profitability. That means that there's enormous pressure on a boss to probably replicate a good part of last season's successes for fear of declining profits quarter on quarter. You really are, if you ignore that imperative, it's really at the risk of losing your job nowadays. Now, on top of that, large retailers such as Federated Department Stores have in the last 15 years been shifting almost all the commercial and financial risk to design brands, forcing designers to give them goods on consignment, penalizing them for the smallest infraction of their supply contracts, and paying designers months and months after delivery. Now, obviously, if you're a young designer trying to be daring or innovative, this is a huge disincentive to try something new. Now, technology magnifies this tendency to play it safe with recycled collections. For example, let me talk about the effect of real-time data analytics and regression analysis and how we analyze sales of seasonal products, for example. This season, regression analysis can tell me jacket A is selling better than jacket B right now, but it doesn't give me any clue about how to make jacket C the next season. Now, this phenomenon, I would say, is pretty similar to what happens on Google search results. If everyone keeps on clicking on the top 3 search results, obviously those top 3 search results, those are going to keep on coming up on the top of the list. Now, this blind faith in numbers, plus the need for short-term profitability, obviously makes it very difficult for the most creative things to make it to the other end of the commercial funnel. The second dynamic, which is pernicious to creativity, is what I would call the development of a the development of a culture of costless creativity. So in the late 1990s, Zara, the Spanish fashion brand, used just-in-time manufacturing to make high-street copies of runway fashion and sent them out within weeks of the appearance of these clothes on the world's runways. This phenomenon was abetted by the launch of websites like Style.com, which is Vogue magazine's flagship website, which publishes runway photos within hours of the style's appearance on the runways. Now, I wasn't crying about this because high-end designers have lost market share. The importance of these events is that it signaled a cultural shift, consciously and subconsciously, where for the first time it became a widespread and acceptable practice to borrow the creativity of the most creative people in the world. Then, I would contend that this kind of already this sense that it was okay to borrow this creativity this mentality was accelerated and deepened by the advent of file sharing sites like Napster and the easy availability of free information, content, music, and images on the internet. Now, on top of that, in a related phenomenon, is mimetic technology. For example, being able to, everyone here can make a digital photo, everyone here can make a print of a photo, and that has also made it seem that the content involved in these transactions has been diminished. So it's almost, whether we're aware of it, the subconscious valuing of this content is affected, giving us the impression that anyone can make or do this. I mean, and also just to, as an illustration, how many people have actually bought a pirated DVD printed in China, and how many of you bought something fake in Shenzhen? Just to also, those of you who are older, I mean, 20 years ago, it was totally unthinkable to buy something counterfeit. Now it's something which more or less, especially I find in my younger friends, which is becoming much more socially acceptable. So that, I would say, is the second major phenomenon. But the main point being that creativity, the idea that creativity has to be paid for, has taken a really serious beating in the last 20 years. Now, the third and final factor undermining creativity is something much more insidious and mechanistic. I call this the narrowing of the funnel of inspiration. And this is also a partially subconscious phenomenon. And I'm speaking really from personal experience as a creative director. Now, think about it. You're a designer or you're a marketing director. It would be almost unthinkable not to take advantage of this surfeit of free information, which, you know, truth be told, is extremely valuable because it's as good as live reporting on the scene of a fashion show. And it really gives you much more accurate analysis information. But of course, over-reliance on the internet leads to intellectual and creative laziness. So, I mean, and so why even bother to go to the library or open an old book when you can just trawl the internet and get 80% of the same images? Now, of course, the problem is that everybody else is looking at those same images. Most dangerously of all, okay, the designers themselves are affected by this unending barrage of fashion show reports, runway photos, and all the same stuff is being experienced by the world's fashion designers, namely through a site called Worth Global Style Network, which we call WGSN in the industry. It so happens that their output is invariably affected by this stuff. There were many times when I was the creative director of Shanghai Tang when I would say to the design team, you guys have to stop looking at WGSN. That dress looks like it was made by, you know, designer X or Y. It even looked like Zara sometimes to me. So whether we like it or not, designers with their vaunted integrity, no matter how much we think that we have erected a bulwark against any kind of leeching of our creativity, that actually isn't the case. Now, so finally, I want to say in closing that I didn't come here to give you a doer prognosis of the future of creativity. It really wasn't about that. It was just to make you more mindful about the landscape of creativity that exists today. And it's a world which is stacked against creativity, to be perfectly frank. So I'll leave you with just this one thought. Creativity requires time, distance, and space to flourish. In today's flat, instantaneous, compressed world, those three things are probably the three most precious things of all. Thank you.